The midlife manifestation reset. The prime opportunity. You know what? Let's talk about something that doesn't get said enough. Midlife isn't some deadline you've missed. It's actually prime time for career reinvention. And I don't mean that in some motivational poster kind of way. I mean it practically, realistically. Think about it. You've spent years, maybe decades, building something. Skills, knowledge, an understanding of how things actually work, not just how they're supposed to work. That's not baggage. That's currency. The thing about reinvention at this stage is that you get to do it with intention. You're not just grabbing at whatever comes your way like you might have in your 20s. You can be deliberate, focused. You know what you don't want, which is just as valuable as knowing what you do want. And here's what makes this phase so powerful. You've got self-awareness now. You understand your patterns. You know when you're making a choice out of fear versus when you're making one out of genuine interest. That clarity, you couldn't buy that in your 20s. The practical steps matter too, of course. We'll get to those. But they work so much better when they're built on this foundation of actually knowing yourself, of having lived enough to understand what fulfillment actually feels like, not just what you thought it would feel like. So midlife becomes this interesting intersection. You've got the wisdom of experience meeting the energy of possibility. And yeah, that energy might feel different than it did at 25. It's not frantic, it's steady, focused. That's actually better for building something that lasts. The people who succeed at midlife career changes, and they do succeed in huge numbers, they're the ones who blend that self-awareness with practical action. They don't just dream, but they don't just hustle mindlessly either. They move with purpose. Take a breath here. Feel into this idea. You're not starting over. You're building forward with everything you've already gathered. That's a completely different thing. The pivot point. Let's reframe something right now. Midlife is not an ending, not a slow decline, not the beginning of the end. It's a pivot point. And pivot points are powerful because they're moments of maximum potential energy. You're standing at a place where you've accumulated wisdom. Real wisdom. Not book learning, but the kind that comes from making mistakes, from succeeding, from watching how people and systems actually work. That's irreplaceable. And your networks. Think about everyone you've worked with, learned from, helped out, collaborated with over the years. Those connections don't disappear. They're there, often just waiting for you to reach out, to reconnect, to collaborate in new ways. Then there's energy. And I know what you might be thinking, but I'm tired. Sure, maybe you're tired of certain things. The politics, the same old patterns, the stuff that doesn't matter. But that's different from not having energy. You got energy for things that actually matter to you. That's untapped potential right there. The pivot point concept is important because it changes how you see this moment. You're not at the end of something, trying to hang on. You're at a junction, choosing a direction, and you get to choose with information you didn't have before. Think about actual pivot points in your life. Career changes, relationship changes, moves to new cities. Those moments probably felt scary, but looking back, they were often times of growth, times when you surprised yourself. This is another one of those moments. Except now you have more tools, more understanding, more patience with the process. Hopefully, you know that change doesn't happen overnight, and you're okay with that. The wisdom piece is huge. You can spot red flags earlier. You know what drains you and what energizes you. You're not guessing anymore about what kind of environment you need to thrive. That's all data you can use. Your networks are deeper than you think. Even if you've lost touch with people, most relationships can be rekindled with a genuine, "I've been thinking about you" message. People are more willing to help than we remember. So you're standing at this pivot point with all these resources. The question isn't whether you can move forward. It's which direction calls to you. And we'll figure that out together, gently, without pressure. Question your stories. Here's something worth sitting with for a moment. Who actually defined the path you're on right now? Was it really you? Or was it a version of you from 10, 15, 20 years ago, responding to circumstances and pressures that might not even exist anymore? We all carry these stories about ourselves. I'm the responsible one. I'm not creative. I'm good with numbers, but bad with people. This is just what people in my family do. Where did those stories come from? Sometimes they came from a parent, a teacher, a counselor who had good intentions, but limited imagination. Sometimes they came from one random comment that stuck. Sometimes they came from trying something once, not being immediately good at it, and deciding that meant something permanent about who you are. But here's the thing about stories. They're malleable. They're not facts, even when they feel like facts. They're interpretations, and interpretations can change. So right now, gently, without judgment, ask yourself, what story have I been telling about my career? About what's possible for me? About what I'm capable of? Maybe your story has been, I'm too old to change now. Or, I should be grateful for what I have. Or, I missed my chance. These stories feel true because we've repeated them so many times. But feeling true and being true are different things. What new narrative actually fits now? Not some fantasy narrative. We're not talking about suddenly becoming an astronaut, if that was never really your thing. But what real, grounded, honest narrative fits who you actually are now? Maybe it's, I'm someone who values creativity more than I've admitted. Or, I'm ready to use my skills in a different context. Or, I want to build something of my own, even if it's small. The new narrative doesn't have to be dramatic. It just has to be more accurate to who you are now, not who you were when you first started on this path. Take some time with this. You don't have to figure it all out tonight, but just notice the stories. Notice where they might be outdated. Notice what might be waiting underneath them. Because once you question the old stories, space opens up, and in that space, new possibilities can emerge. Possibilities that were always there, just hidden behind narratives that no longer serve you. This isn't about rejecting your past. It's about being honest about your present and open to your future. Those old stories got you here, and that's okay. But you get to write the next chapter yourself. Values-based success. Let's talk about success for a minute. What does it actually mean to you? Not what it means in the abstract. Not what it means to your parents or your partner or society. What does it mean to you, specifically, right now? Because here's something that happens. We spend years chasing a version of success that was handed to us. More money, higher title, bigger house. And those things aren't bad. But if they're not connected to your actual values, they end up feeling hollow. Fulfillment over salary alone. That's not about being naive or impractical. It's about recognizing that sustainable drive comes from alignment. When what you're doing matches what you value, you don't have to force yourself forward. There's a natural pull. Think about the last time you felt genuinely fulfilled in work. Not just proud of an accomplishment, but fulfilled. Chances are it wasn't just about the paycheck that month. It was probably about using a skill you value, or helping someone, or solving a problem that mattered to you, or expressing something creative, or building something with others. Your values at midlife might be different than they were at 25. That's not only normal, it's expected. Maybe at 25 you valued proving yourself. Now, maybe you value collaboration, or autonomy, or making a tangible difference, or having time for life outside work. None of these are better or worse. They're just yours. And when you define success by your actual values, something shifts. The career moves that made no sense before suddenly become obvious. The paths you were forcing yourself down reveal themselves as misaligned. This creates sustainable drive because you're not operating on willpower alone. Willpower depletes, but alignment with values? That's renewable. It's the difference between pushing a boulder uphill and sailing with a favorable wind. So what do you actually value? Maybe it's creativity, learning, helping others, independence, security, adventure, connection, mastery, contribution, balance. Probably it's some combination. And what would success look like if it was built on those values? This might look different than you expect. It might be a lower paying job that lets you work on meaningful projects. It might be starting something small and sustainable rather than big and stressful. It might be freelancing. It might be moving into a support role instead of leadership. There's no right answer. There's only your answer. And your answer gets to be different than everyone else's. It gets to be different than it was before. It gets to evolve. When you're clear on this, decisions become easier. Opportunities sort themselves into aligned and not aligned. You stop wasting energy on paths that don't actually lead where you want to go. Rest in this question, not to answer it completely tonight, but to start feeling into it. What do you actually value? What would success based on those values look like? Let it be simple. Let it be honest. The energizing question. Clarity doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes it starts with one simple question. What energized you most in past roles, and why? Not what you were best at. Not what got you promoted. Not what other people praised you for. What energized you? What made time disappear? What did you find yourself thinking about after work? Not because you had to, but because you wanted to. This is important because energy is information. Your energy tells you what's aligned with your nature. And I don't mean some mystical thing. I mean practically, neurologically, you're wired in certain ways. Some activities light up your brain, and some don't. Maybe it was solving complex problems. Maybe it was mentoring someone. Maybe it was the creative process. Maybe it was organizing chaos into systems. Maybe it was being on the front lines with customers. Maybe it was the autonomy of working independently. And here's the why part. That's where the real insight lives. If you were energized by solving problems, why? Was it the intellectual challenge? The satisfaction of fixing something broken? The recognition you got? The teamwork involved? The why reveals what to look for next. People often overlook their energized moments because those activities felt easy. We're trained to think that work should be hard, should feel like effort. So when something comes naturally and feels good, we dismiss it as, oh, that's nothing special. But that's exactly what's special. That's your zone. That's what you could build a whole career around, if you let yourself. Think back through your career, not chronologically, but thematically. When did you feel most alive at work? Not happiest necessarily. Energized, present, engaged without forcing it. Maybe there's a pattern. Maybe you were always most energized when learning something new, or when collaborating, or when you had autonomy, or when there was a tight deadline, or when you were building from scratch. These energized moments are breadcrumbs. They point toward your next move, even if you can't see the full path yet. You don't need to see the full path. You just need to see the next step, and these memories illuminate it. The other thing about energy is that it's different from passion in a useful way. Passion can be fickle. Energy is steadier. Passion says, I'm obsessed with this. Energy says, I could do this for hours without depleting. That's what you want to follow. So don't overthink this. Just notice, scan through your past, and collect those moments. The times when you looked up and 3 hours had passed. The projects you volunteered for. The tasks you did even when no one was watching. Your energy is trying to tell you something. It's been trying to tell you for years. Maybe now is the time to listen. Transferable assets. Here's something that gets overlooked in career change conversations. You're not starting from zero. Not even close. You've been accumulating assets for years. They're just disguised as your job. These skills you've built, they're transferable. And I mean truly transferable, not in the vague resume speak way. I mean you can take them and apply them in completely different contexts, industries, roles. Let's break this down. You probably have some version of these. Communication skills, project management, understanding how to navigate organizational politics, relationship building, problem solving, analytical thinking, teaching or mentoring, handling pressure, budgeting, negotiating, synthesizing information. Those sound generic until you realize they're the foundation of almost every role that exists. The specifics change, but these core capabilities transfer everywhere. Think about what you actually do in a given week. Strip away the industry jargon and the specific context. What are you actually doing? Probably some combination of communicating ideas, solving problems, coordinating with others, analyzing situations, making decisions, creating something, maintaining something, improving something. Those skills work in any field. A teacher who moves into corporate training isn't starting over. They're applying the same core skill in a new context. An accountant who becomes a financial coach is using their analytical skills differently, not learning from scratch. The key is identifying your transferable assets first, before you jump into the what next question. Because when you know what you're bringing to the table, you build momentum. You realize you're not this lost person starting over. You're someone with valuable capabilities looking for a better fit. Make a list, not a resume, just a personal inventory. What can you do? Not just formally, but really. Can you make complex things simple? Can you bring people together? Can you see patterns? Can you execute under pressure? Can you learn quickly? Can you earn trust? These are assets. They have value. They transfer across boundaries you might think are solid, and they give you options you might not see yet. The other piece of this is that your accumulated experience gives you judgment. You've seen what works and what doesn't. You understand timing, nuance, context. That's an asset too. You won't make the same rookie mistakes someone younger would make. So you're not starting from zero. You're starting from a position of accumulated capability. You're just redirecting that capability towards something more aligned. That's a completely different proposition. Feel into that for a moment. You have assets, real ones, valuable ones. They've been building for years. Now you get to use them more intentionally. The future self vision. Let's try something. Close your eyes for a moment if you're comfortable doing that, or just soften your gaze. Imagine yourself 2 years from now. You've made this change. You're doing work that actually aligns with who you are. What does a regular Tuesday look like? Not some fantasy day, a regular Tuesday. Where are you working? What time do you start? What's the first thing you do? Who do you interact with? What problems are you solving? How do you feel at the end of that Tuesday? Tired in a good way or drained in a bad way? Do you think about work after hours with dread or with quiet engagement? This future self vision, this is powerful not because it's mystical, but because it's practical. Your brain needs a target. It needs somewhere to aim. Vague wishes don't create movement, but a vivid, sensory vision, that activates something. The emotional stakes amplify progress. When you can feel what it would be like to live that aligned life, even just for a moment, it creates pull, not pressure. Pull. There's a difference. Pressure pushes you forward through force. Pull draws you forward through desire. Make this vision specific. What are you wearing? What does your workspace look like? What's the pace of your day? Are you with people or alone? Are you creating something or improving something or maintaining something? And crucially, why does this matter? What would this change give you that you don't have now? More time, more meaning, more autonomy, more connection, more creative expression, more financial stability, more peace. Connect to that why. That's your fuel. When the practical steps feel hard or slow, this vision is what keeps you moving. Not because you're forcing it, but because you remember why it matters. Your future self is quieter, maybe, not stressed in the same ways, not pretending, not contorting to fit something that doesn't quite work, just doing work that fits. Imagine what that feels like in your body. This isn't about creating some perfect fantasy. Perfect doesn't exist, but aligned does. Sustainable does. Good enough does. And those are worth working toward. Return to this vision when you need to. Refine it as you learn more about what you actually want. Let evolve, but keep it vivid. Keep it sensory. Keep it connected to how you want to feel, not just what you want to achieve. Because that feeling, that quiet excitement, that sense of alignment, that's what you're manifesting. Not a specific job title or salary number, necessarily, but a way of working and being that actually fits who you've become. Flexible direction over fixed goals. Here's where we shift from the old way of thinking about goals. You don't need a 5-year plan. You don't need to know exactly where you'll end up. You need a direction, and there's a huge difference. Fixed goals are brittle. They're either achieved or failed. They don't account for what you learn along the way. They don't allow for discovery. And at midlife, with career change, discovery is essential. Flexible direction is different. It's more like, I want to move toward work that involves more creativity, or I want to build something of my own, or I want to use my skills in a context that helps people directly. That's a direction. You can move toward it in multiple ways. And this is where experiments come in. Side projects, small tests, trying things without committing your entire life to them first. This is how you refine your path naturally. Maybe you think you want to do consulting. Okay, try it. Take one small consulting project. See how it actually feels. Not how you think it will feel. How it actually feels. That's data. Maybe you think you want to move into a creative field. Start a creative side project. Dedicate a few hours a week to it. See if the reality matches the fantasy. Often it does. Sometimes it doesn't. Either way, you learn. These experiments refine your direction without requiring you to quit your job or make massive changes before you're ready. They let you test assumptions. They let you build skills gradually. They let you discover what you didn't know you didn't know. The beauty of flexible direction is that it reduces pressure. You're not failing if you try something and it doesn't work. You're gathering information. You're narrowing the path. Every experiment brings clarity. Think of it like sailing. You don't point the boat at the destination and go in a straight line. You tack. You adjust to the wind. You respond to conditions. But you keep moving in the general direction. That's what we're doing here. So what experiments could you run? What small projects? What conversations could you have? What did you try for 1 month just to see? These don't have to be big. They just have to give you information. Maybe it's taking an online course in something you're curious about. Maybe it's offering to help a friend with their business to test whether you like that kind of work. Maybe it's writing in public to see if you enjoy that process. Maybe it's attending a meetup in a field you're interested in. Each experiment shifts your understanding. Each one reveals something, and gradually, naturally, your path becomes clearer. Not because you force clarity, but because you let it emerge through action. This is manifestation meeting reality. Not sitting and visualizing, not grinding mindlessly, but moving with intention, staying flexible, and trusting that the path reveals itself as you walk it. Rest in this idea of flexible direction. It takes pressure off. It allows for discovery. It makes the whole process less scary and more interesting. You're exploring, not executing. That's actually more fun. Clear vision plus deliberate steps. Let's talk about what manifestation actually means, stripped of all the magical thinking. Manifestation meets reality here. It's not about vague wishes or vision boards without action. It's about clear vision aligned with deliberate steps. The vision part we've touched on. You need to know where you're headed, even if it's general direction rather than specific destination. But vision alone doesn't change anything. It just sits there, pretty and inspiring, and ultimately frustrating. The deliberate steps, that's where vision becomes real. And deliberate doesn't mean complicated. It means intentional. It means each action is chosen because it moves you toward your vision, even incrementally. Think of it like this. If your vision is to move into work that's more creative, a deliberate step might be spending 30 minutes today researching people who've made that transition, or sketching out ideas for a creative project, or reaching out to one person who works in a creative field. These steps are small. They're doable, but they're aligned. They're not random. They're not just busy work. They're deliberately chosen to move you toward your vision. The magic, if there is any, is in the consistency of aligned action. Not huge dramatic gestures, just steady, deliberate steps, day after day, week after week. That compounds. Most people get stuck in one of two places. Either they have vision but no action. They dream but don't do. Or they have action but no vision. They're busy but directionless. Neither works. You need both. Clear vision, so you know where you're going. Deliberate steps, so you actually get there. And the steps inform the vision. As you act, you learn. Your vision refines. You adjust. You keep moving. This is grounded manifestation. Your feet are on the earth. You're not waiting for the universe to deliver. You're actively creating. But you're creating with intention, not just throwing things at the wall. So what does this look like practically? It means you have a vision, even a rough one. I want work that feels more aligned with my values. I want to build something of my own. I want to use my skills in a different industry. And then you identify the steps. Not all of them. You don't need to see the whole staircase. Just the next few steps. What's one thing you could do this week that moves you toward that vision? Maybe it's research. Maybe it's a conversation. Maybe it's signing up for something. Maybe it's creating something. Maybe it's saying no to something that's not aligned. All of these are deliberate steps. The combination of vision and action creates momentum. And momentum is what carries you through the hard parts, the uncertain parts, the slow parts. Because you're not just hoping, you're actively building. Take a moment and feel into this. You have vision, or you're developing it. And you can take steps. Today, tomorrow, this week. Small ones, deliberate ones. That's all you need to start. Micro actions that compound. 25 minutes. That's all we're talking about. Not hours, not your whole day. 25 minutes of focused, aligned action. Daily. Break the reset into micro actions. This is how transformation actually happens. Not in one massive overhaul. Not in a dramatic quit your job and start over moment. But in small, daily practices that compound over time. Think about what compounds means. It means the effects multiply. 25 minutes today is just 25 minutes. But 25 minutes every day for a month. That's over 12 hours of focused progress. Over a year, over 100 hours. And it's not just about the time. It's about the consistency. Your brain starts to recognize this as important. Your identity starts to shift. You become someone who takes daily action toward your vision. That's different than someone who thinks about it occasionally. What could you do in 25 minutes? Research one company you're interested in. Draft one email to someone in your desired field. Work on one small piece of a side project. Read one chapter of a relevant book. Practice one new skill. The key is that it's focused, not distracted. Scrolling while Netflix plays, focused. actually focused, which is why 25 minutes works. It's short enough that you can maintain focus, long enough that you can make real progress. Use a timer if that helps. 25 minutes, then done. You don't have to save the world today. You just have to take one small step. Tomorrow, another small step. The day after, another. This is the opposite of overwhelming yourself. This is making change sustainable. Because if you tell yourself, I need to spend 4 hours every evening working on my career transition, you'll do it twice and then give up. It's too much. Life is too full. But 25 minutes? You have 25 minutes. Even on your busiest day, you have 25 minutes. Maybe it's early morning before everyone else is up. Maybe it's lunch break. Maybe it's after dinner. Maybe it's before bed. It exists somewhere. And here's what happens. Some days you'll do your 25 minutes and feel energized, so you'll keep going. That's great, but you don't have to. The baseline is 25 minutes. If that's all you do, you're winning. These micro actions compound into transformation. Not might compound. Do compound. That's how change works when you do it this way. Steadily, sustainably, without burning out or giving up. Think about what your 25-minute practice could be. What would move you toward your vision? What's one repeatable action you could do daily or most days? Maybe it's different each day. Monday is research. Tuesday is skill building. Wednesday is networking. Thursday is creating. Friday is reflecting. That's fine, as long as it's deliberate and consistent. The compound effect is patient but powerful. Trust it. 25 minutes today doesn't feel like much, but 25 minutes for 6 months? You'll be shocked at how far you've come. If-then rules. Here's a simple tool that's surprisingly powerful. If-then rules. These are tiny behavioral commitments that remove decision fatigue and make follow-through almost automatic. The format is simple. If situation, then I action. For example, if evening arrives, then I spend 20 minutes on one career exploration step. Why does this work? Because you're not relying on motivation or willpower in the moment. You've already decided. The situation triggers the action automatically. It's pre-committed. Decision fatigue is real, especially at midlife when you're juggling responsibilities. Every decision depletes you slightly. So when evening arrives and you're tired, the question, should I work on my career stuff or should I watch TV, is genuinely hard. But if you've already made an if-then rule, there's no decision. Evening arrives. You've committed. You do the thing. It's automatic. This doesn't mean you become a robot. You can adjust your rules. You can have flexibility. But having the rule there, as a default, dramatically increases follow-through. Other examples. If I finish my morning coffee, then I spend 10 minutes reading about my target industry. If I'm waiting for a meeting to start, then I review my career vision. If Saturday morning arrives, then I work on my side project. The situation can be time-based or event-based. Whatever works for your life and rhythm. The key is linking the action to something that reliably happens. You can stack these rules too. If I complete my evening career action, then I write down one thing I learned in my journal. Now you're building multiple habits that reinforce each other. The beauty of if-then rules is they work with your psychology instead of against it. You're not trying to be a different person. You're not relying on constant motivation. You're just creating a simple system that makes the right action easier than the alternative. Start with one rule. Just one. Something realistic. Something that fits naturally into your existing routine. Try it for a week. Notice what happens. Often what happens is, you follow through more than you expect. Because the decision is already made. The path is clear. You just execute. And when you follow through, that builds identity. You become someone who takes consistent action. That's different than someone who takes occasional action when motivated. That identity shift creates momentum all its own. If-then rules are practical manifestation. They're the bridge between intention and action. They're how you stop relying on feeling like it and start building regardless of how you feel. Simple, effective, sustainable. Pick your first if-then rule and commit to it. Watch what changes. Intentional planning success. Here's something encouraging. Midlife career changers succeed at rates over 90% when they plan intentionally. Over 90%. That's not random. That's not luck. That's the power of experience meeting intention. Why such high success rates? Because you're not winging it. You're not just hoping. You're bringing everything you've learned about how things actually work, and you're applying it deliberately to your transition. Think about what you know now that you didn't know at 25. You know how to read people. You know how organizations work. You know how to manage your energy. You know how to navigate obstacles. You know when to push and when to pause. That's the experience advantage. Younger people might have raw energy and fewer responsibilities, but they don't have your judgment. They don't have your perspective. They make mistakes you've already made and learned from. When you plan intentionally, not perfectly, but intentionally, you leverage all of that. You think about not just what you want to do, but how to actually get there. You anticipate obstacles. You build and buffer. You create realistic timelines. Intentional planning doesn't mean rigid planning. It means thoughtful planning. It means asking, what do I need to learn? Who do I need to connect with? What experiments should I run? What's the sequence that makes sense? It also means planning for your actual life, not some fantasy version. You have responsibilities, commitments, financial needs. Your plan has to work with reality, not against it. And because you're experienced, you know how to do that. The 90% success rate is encouraging, but it's also instructive. It tells you that this is doable, that people like you, at this stage, with intention and planning, do this successfully all the time. You're not an outlier for wanting this. You're not crazy for attempting it. You're actually in good company. And you have advantages those younger than you don't have. You just need to trust your experience and apply it deliberately to this transition. What does intentional planning look like? It's different for everyone, but it generally includes clarity on direction, understanding of your transferable skills, realistic assessment of your constraints, identification of gaps you need to fill, a timeline that accounts for your life, and milestones to track progress. It's not complicated. It's just thoughtful. And when you're thoughtful, when you leverage your experience, when you plan with intention, you succeed at rates most people would envy. So take heart in this. You're not fighting against the odds. The odds are actually in your favor. If you approach this with the wisdom and intention you've accumulated, that's powerful. That should give you confidence. Rest in that for a moment. You're capable of this. People like you do this successfully all the time. You have what it takes. Early feedback loops. Don't wait until everything is perfect to give feedback. That's one of the biggest mistakes people make. They work in isolation, polishing and perfecting, and then they share and realize they've been heading in the wrong direction. Seek feedback loops early. Share prototypes. Share rough drafts. Share half-formed ideas with trusted networks. The key word there is trusted. You're not sharing with critics or naysayers. You're sharing with people who want to see you succeed. Early feedback gives you rapid refinement. Someone might say, "Oh, have you thought about this angle?" And suddenly your whole approach shifts in a better direction. Or they might say, "This part really resonates," and you realize that's what to emphasize. This is especially valuable in career transition because you're trying to figure out what works. You don't know yet. You're experimenting. Feedback shortens the learning curve dramatically. Who are these trusted people? Maybe former colleagues who know your strengths. Maybe friends in the field you're moving toward. Maybe a mentor or career coach. Maybe people in your network who've made similar transitions. The ask is simple. I'm working on this career transition and exploring X direction. Would you be willing to look at what I'm thinking and give me honest feedback? Most people say yes. People like being asked for advice. What you're sharing might be a draft of how you're positioning yourself, or a prototype of a service you're considering offering, or ideas for a side project, or you're thinking about what direction to move in. Whatever you're working on, share it earlier than feels comfortable. Early feedback also builds accountability. When people know what you're working on, you're more likely to follow through, and they become part of your support network. They're invested in your success now. The refinement that comes from feedback is so much faster than trying to figure everything out alone. Someone can spot a blind spot in 30 seconds that might have taken you 3 months to discover on your own. And here's the thing about feedback at midlife. You're mature enough to receive it well. You're not as defensive as you might have been younger. You can hear this isn't quite working without it destroying you. You can take what's useful and leave what isn't. So practice asking for feedback early and often. Make it a habit. "Hey, can I run something by you?" becomes a regular part of your transition process. The people who succeed at career change aren't the ones who figure everything out alone in their heads. They're the ones who engage others early, get input, refine quickly, and keep moving based on what they learn. Build your feedback loops. Identify your trusted people. Start sharing. The rapid refinement you'll experience will surprise you. Failure quotas build resilience. Here's a radical idea. Aim for failure. Not because you want to fail, but because trying things that might not work is how you build resilience. And resilience is what carries you through any significant transition. Set yourself a failure quota. 3 tests per week. 3 attempts at something where the outcome is uncertain. 3 tries where you might fall flat on your face. And then learn from each one without judgment. This flips the script on failure. Usually we avoid failure. We stay safe. We only do things we're pretty sure will work. But that keeps us stuck. That keeps us in the same patterns. When you have a failure quota, failure becomes expected, normal, even desirable, in a way, because it means you're testing the boundaries. You're gathering data. You're learning what works and what doesn't. What might these tests look like? Maybe you reach out to someone and they don't respond. That's 1. Maybe you try a new approach to a project and it doesn't work. That's 2. Maybe you pitch an idea and it gets rejected. That's 3. Quota met. Good week. The without judgment part is crucial. You're not failing because you're not good enough. You're testing because you're learning. Those are completely different things. One is about inadequacy. The other is about growth. Think about how children learn. They try things. They fail constantly. They fall down learning to walk. They mess up learning to talk. They get things wrong learning to read. And they keep going because they don't attach identity to the failures. They're just learning. Somewhere along the way, we forget that. We start thinking failure means something about who we are. But it doesn't. It just means we tried something and got information about what doesn't work. That's valuable information. At midlife, this becomes even more important because you're trying new things. You're stepping outside your expertise zone. You're going to get things wrong. That's guaranteed. The question is whether you let that stop you or whether you expect it and keep moving. 3 tests per week means you're actively pushing boundaries. You're not playing it safe. You're not waiting until you're 100% sure. You're acting, observing results, and adjusting. That's how you find your way forward. And each test builds resilience. The first rejection stings. The 10th one, you barely notice. You've learned that rejection isn't personal. It's just information. This wasn't the right fit, or the right timing, or the right approach. Okay, next test. This is resilience. Not being unaffected by difficulty, but being able to move through it without it stopping you. Each failed test is practice in moving through difficulty. Each one strengthens that muscle. So reframe failure in your mind. It's not the enemy. It's not proof you should give up. It's data. It's practice. It's how you learn what actually works in your specific situation with your specific goals. Set your failure quota. 3 tests this week. See what happens. Notice how it feels to expect failure rather than fear it. Notice how liberating it is to try things without needing them to be perfect. The people who succeed at midlife career change aren't the ones who never fail. They're the ones who fail regularly, learn quickly, and keep moving. That's the path. That's how this works. Track wins visibly. Here's something simple that makes a surprising difference. Track your wins visibly. And by wins, I don't mean only the big stuff. I mean every small step forward, every action taken, every bit of progress made. A simple journal turns abstract manifestation into tangible proof. You're not just hoping and wishing. You're actively creating, and you have evidence of it. That evidence matters more than you might think. Why? Because our brains are wired to notice what's not working. It's a survival mechanism. We fixate on problems and overlook progress. So if you don't deliberately track your wins, you'll miss them. You'll feel like you're not getting anywhere, even when you are. The journal doesn't need to be fancy. A notebook, a simple digital document, whatever works. The key is consistency. At the end of each day or each week, you write down what you did, what moved forward, what you learned. Maybe today you had your 25-minute practice. That's a win. Write it down. Maybe you reached out to one person. That's a win. Write it down. Maybe you spent an hour researching and now you understand your target field better. That's a win. Write it down. Over time, this creates a record. And when you're feeling stuck or discouraged, which happens, this is normal. You can look back and see, oh, actually, I've made a lot of progress. Look at all these things I've done. Look how far I've come from where I started. This visible tracking creates positive reinforcement. Your brain starts to recognize, when I take action, progress happens. That strengthens your commitment. It makes it easier to keep going. It also helps you notice patterns. Maybe you notice that your best ideas come in the morning, or that networking conversations energize you more than you expected, or that certain types of tasks drain you. This is all useful information that helps you refine your approach. The wins you're tracking don't have to be impressive to anyone else. They just have to be real to you. Maybe today's win was just showing up for your practice, even though you were tired. That counts. That's evidence of commitment. Some people like to be really specific. Researched 3 companies in target industry, found 2 interesting contacts, sent 1 email. Other people are more general, made progress on career exploration today. Both work. Use whatever style keeps you consistent. You can also track insights and learnings, not just actions. Realize today that I value autonomy more than prestige. Learn that consulting might not be the right fit after talking with Sarah. These realizations are wins too. They're clarity. They're progress. The visible part matters. Not just thinking about your progress, but seeing it written down. There's something psychological about that. It makes it real in a different way. It's not just in your head anymore. It exists in the world. Over weeks and months, this record becomes powerful. You can flip back and see where you were 3 months ago versus where you are now. The progress that felt invisible in the day-to-day becomes obvious in the accumulation. So start your win journal today, or tonight, right now even. Write down one thing you've done toward your career reset. Just one thing. That's your first entry. Tomorrow, add another. The day after, another. Watch what accumulates. This is manifestation made tangible. You're not just visualizing. You're documenting. You're creating proof that you're someone who takes action toward their vision. And that proof reinforces everything else you're doing. Minimum viable skill. Here's a practical approach to building confidence fast. Minimum viable skill. Master 1 good enough ability per month. Not perfect, not expert level, just good enough to be useful. This concept comes from the startup world. Minimum viable product. The idea is you don't build the perfect product before launching. You build the simplest version that works, get it out there, and improve based on feedback. Same principle applies to skills. You don't need to spend a year becoming an expert before that skill becomes useful to you. You need to spend a focused amount of time getting to good enough, and then you can use it while continuing to improve. What's good enough? It's functional. It's useful. It solves a real problem or opens a real door. It might not be polished, but it works. And once you have one skill at good enough level, you can build the next one. Why 1 per month? Because it's achievable without overwhelming yourself. 1 month of focused practice, maybe those 25-minute daily sessions we talked about, can get you to good enough in most skills. Examples. Maybe you want to transition into a field that requires basic coding. You don't need to become a software engineer. You need to understand enough to be conversational and functional. 1 month of focused learning can get you there. Or maybe you need to get good enough at using a particular software, or networking, or public speaking, or writing, or basic graphic design, or data analysis. Whatever skill would move your transition forward, you can get it good enough in a month. The confidence boost from this is real. Each month, you've added a capability you didn't have before. You're literally becoming more capable in visible, practical ways. That builds momentum. It also removes the excuse of, I can't do this until I have X skill. No, you can build X skill to good enough level in a month, and then you can do the thing. The gap between where you are and where you need to be isn't as big as it feels. This approach also helps you figure out what you actually need versus what you think you need. You might think you need to be an expert at something, but when you get it good enough, you realize that's actually sufficient, or you realize you need a different skill entirely. The key is focused practice, not scattered learning, not just reading about something, actually practicing it, doing exercises, creating small projects, using the skill in some real context, even if it's just for yourself. And good enough doesn't mean sloppy. It means functional. It means you can deliver value with this skill, even if someone else could deliver more value. That's fine. You're not competing with experts. You're building your own, unique combination of capabilities. Think about what skill would most help your transition right now. Just one. What would move you forward? What's holding you back because you don't have it yet? That's your target for this month. Then break it down. What would good enough look like? What resources do you need? What practice could you do in your daily 25 minutes? How will you know when you've reached good enough? By this time next month, you'll have that capability. And the month after, another one. And the month after, another one. In 6 months, you'll have 6 new skills at good enough level. That's transformative. This is how you build confidence. Not through affirmations or positive thinking, but through actual capability. You become someone who can do things you couldn't do before. That's real. That's solid. That gives you genuine confidence. Pick your skill. Start today. 1 month from now, you'll have it. And you'll be ready for the next one. Align your environment. Your environment shapes you more than you probably realize. The spaces you inhabit, the inputs you consume, the people you're around, all of it either supports your transition or works against it. So let's talk about alignment. Align environment means curate spaces and influences that mirror your desired career reality. This isn't about perfection. It's about intentional adjustment. Small changes that shift the whole atmosphere. Start with your physical space. Look around your work area. Does it reflect the person you're becoming or the person you were? If you're moving toward more creative work, is there anything in your space that supports creativity? If you're building something entrepreneurial, does your space feel entrepreneurial? This might mean clearing clutter. It might mean adding inspiration, quotes, images, objects that remind you of your vision. It might mean creating a dedicated space, even if it's just a corner, that's specifically for your transition work. The psychological effect of this is real. When you sit in a space that reflects your new direction, your brain gets the message. This is who I'm becoming. It's a subtle but constant reminder and reinforcement. Now think about inputs. What are you consuming? What are you reading, watching, listening to? Is it aligned with where you're going, or is it just noise? Maybe you need to follow different people on social media. People who are doing what you want to do, or who inspire the mindset you need. Maybe you need to read different books or listen to different podcasts. Maybe you need to unfollow things that drain or distract you. This isn't about creating an echo chamber. It's about being deliberate. Your attention is limited. What deserves it? What actually helps versus what just fills time? Then there's the social environment. This one's trickier because you can't always change who's around you, but you can expand your circle. You can spend more time with people who support your growth and less with people who don't. This doesn't mean abandoning old friends. It means being honest about who energizes you versus who depletes you, who believes in your transition versus who's skeptical or dismissive. Spend more time in the first category and actively seek out new connections aligned with your direction. Join groups, attend events, engage in online communities. Surround yourself with people who are on similar paths or who are where you want to be. Environmental alignment also means protecting yourself from negativity. Not in a delusional way. You still need to deal with reality. But you don't need to marinate in worst-case thinking or constant criticism. You need enough optimism and encouragement to keep moving. Think about the daily inputs you can control. Morning routine. Does it set you up well? Evening routine. Does it reinforce your vision? The media you consume during downtime. Does it inspire or just numb? Small adjustments compound here too. Maybe you start your day by reviewing your vision instead of scrolling news. Maybe you end your day by reading something inspiring instead of watching random TV. Maybe you listen to relevant podcasts during your commute. Your environment is either working for you or against you. There's not really a neutral. So take an honest look. What needs a shift? What needs to be added? What needs to be removed? You don't have to change everything overnight, but start somewhere. Change one thing this week. Maybe it's clearing your desk. Maybe it's unfollowing 10 accounts that don't serve you. Maybe it's reaching out to one person who's aligned with your direction. Each environmental shift makes the transition easier. You're not fighting against your surroundings anymore. You're supported by them. That makes everything else we've talked about more doable. Your space, your inputs, your social circle. Align them gradually with your vision. Watch how much easier it becomes to move forward. Networks expand in midlife. Here's something encouraging that doesn't get talked about enough. Networks expand in midlife. You actually have more networking power now than you did when you were younger. You just might not realize it. Think about everyone you've worked with over the years. Everyone you've collaborated with, learned from, helped out. Everyone you went to school with, trained with, met at conferences. That's a substantial network, even if you've lost touch with many of them. And here's the thing. Those connections don't disappear. They're dormant, maybe, but not gone. Most of them would be happy to hear from you. Most of them would be willing to help if you reached out with a genuine request. But the key is how you reach out. Not cold pitches. Not, hey, I'm looking for a job. "Can you hire me?" That's not networking. That's asking for favors. Real networking is about informational chats, curiosity, genuine connection. The approach is simple. "I've been thinking about you and wondering how you're doing. I'm exploring a transition into field/direction and would love to hear about your experience in that space. Would you be open to a brief conversation?" Most people say yes to this. Why? Because you're not asking them to solve your problem. You're asking for their perspective. People like sharing their experience. They like being helpful, and they like being thought of. These informational conversations serve multiple purposes. You learn about the field you're moving into. You get reality checks on your assumptions. You gather insights that you couldn't find through research alone. And you're building relationships that might lead somewhere down the line. The diverse connections part is important. Don't just talk to people who are exactly where you want to be. Talk to people adjacent to it. People who intersect with it in different ways. You need multiple perspectives, not just one. Maybe you talk to someone who's been in the field for 20 years, and someone who just entered it, and someone who left it, and someone who works with people in that field. Each conversation adds nuance to your understanding. Your age and experience actually make networking easier, not harder. You have more to offer in these conversations. You have perspective. You have stories. You have insights from your own career that might be valuable to them. It's not one-sided, and you're more mature about networking now. You're not desperately trying to impress people or collect business cards. You're genuinely interested in understanding their world. That authenticity comes through and makes people want to help. The expansion of your network at midlife also happens naturally as you explore your transition. You take a course, that's new connections. You attend a meetup, more connections. You start a side project, people notice and reach out. Your network grows through action. The mistake people make is thinking they need to network perfectly or professionally. They psych themselves out. But networking is just conversation. It's just expressing genuine interest in someone's path and sharing your own. Start with the low-hanging fruit. Who in your existing network is closest to your direction? Reach out to them first. Have a few conversations. Build confidence. Then expand to people you know less well. Then to people you don't know at all, but have something in common with. LinkedIn makes this easier. You can see who's in your extended network. You can see what people are doing. You can find natural connection points. I noticed you're working in field. I'm exploring a move in that direction and would love to learn from your experience. Or you can ask for introductions. I'm trying to learn more about field. Do you know anyone who works in that space who might be willing to have a brief conversation with me? Your network is larger and more powerful than you think. And it's ready to help you if you engage it thoughtfully. Not with asks, but with curiosity. Not with demands, but with genuine interest. Cultivate those diverse connections. Have those informational chats. Watch how your understanding deepens and your opportunities expand. This is one of your biggest advantages at midlife. Use it. Protect recovery time. Let's talk about something that often gets overlooked in the push to make progress. Recovery time. Rest. Sleep. The space between actions. This isn't optional. It's essential. Protect recovery time because sleep consolidates intentions. This isn't just about feeling rested, though that matters. It's about how your brain actually processes and integrates everything you're learning and experiencing. When you sleep, your brain does something remarkable. It consolidates memories. It processes emotions. It integrates new information with existing knowledge. It literally rewires itself based on what you've been focusing on during the day. So all those deliberate actions you're taking, all that learning, experimenting, networking, your brain is processing that while you sleep. It's turning conscious effort into subconscious habit. It's making connections you couldn't make consciously. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. It's better to do 25 minutes daily with good sleep than 4 hours once a week while exhausted. The daily practice with sleep in between lets your brain consolidate. The scattered, exhausted approach doesn't. Think of sleep as part of the manifestation process, not separate from it. You're not just visualizing during the day and then sleeping. You're working on your transition during waking hours, and your brain is continuing that work while you sleep. But this only happens if you actually protect that recovery time. If you're constantly sleep-deprived, stressed, running on fumes, your brain can't do this consolidation work. You're undermining your own progress. Recovery isn't just sleep, though sleep is the foundation. It's also downtime. Moments where you're not productive, not consuming information, not networking, just being, walking, sitting, doing nothing in particular. These moments matter because your brain needs space to process. If you're constantly inputting, working, learning, consuming content, being busy, there's no room for integration. The insights can't emerge. The connections can't form. Some of your best clarity will come during recovery time. In the shower, on a walk, right before sleep. That's not coincidence. That's your brain having space to work without your conscious mind interfering. So build recovery into your plan, not as something you'll do if you have time, but as a non-negotiable. You need 7 to 8 hours of sleep. You need some downtime each day. You need space to process. This might mean saying no to some things. It might mean being less productive in the short term, but it makes you more effective in the long term. Exhausted effort is inefficient. Rested, focused effort compounds. And here's the thing about midlife. You probably know this already. You've experienced what happens when you run yourself into the ground. You've learned that you can't sustain that. So honor what you know. Your transition isn't a sprint. It's a sustainable pace over time. And sustainable pace requires recovery. It requires sleep. It requires moments of rest where nothing is happening except integration. Pay attention to your sleep quality. Are you getting enough? Is it restful? If not, what needs to adjust? Maybe your evening routine. Maybe your environment. Maybe your stress management. This is worth figuring out. Also notice your energy patterns. When you feel most clear, when you feel most foggy, your best thinking and action probably happen at certain times. Schedule accordingly. Don't fight your natural rhythms. Recovery time is how vision turns into a subconscious habit. It's how deliberate practice becomes automatic. It's how the person you're becoming integrates with who you are. Don't skip this part. It's not weakness. It's wisdom. Protect your sleep. Protect your downtime. Let your brain do its work. Trust that rest is part of progress, not separate from it. This is how sustainable transformation happens. The unfolding. We've covered a lot. 20 principles, 20 segments, 20 pieces of this puzzle. But here's what it all comes down to. The reset completes in consistency. Small, aligned actions manifest the career you deserve, unfolding naturally over time. Not forced, not frantic, not through some massive overhaul that exhausts you. Through consistency, through alignment, through small actions, repeated, that compound into transformation. This is the long game. And midlife is actually perfect for the long game because you've learned patience. You understand that real change takes time. You're not looking for overnight success anymore. You're building something sustainable. The career you deserve. Let's sit with that phrase for a moment. Not the career you think you should want. Not the career that would impress others. The career you actually deserve based on your values, your skills, your vision for how you want to live. That career exists, and it unfolds naturally when you do the work we've talked about. When you gain clarity, when you take daily action, when you build skills, when you network thoughtfully, when you experiment and learn, when you protect your recovery time. You don't have to force it into existence. You have to create the conditions for it to emerge. That's what all these principles are. They're conditions. They're the environment in which your aligned career can grow. Think of it like planting a garden. You don't make plants grow by pulling on them. You create the right conditions, good soil, water, sunlight, time, and they grow naturally. That's what you're doing here. The unfolding happens over time. Maybe it takes 6 months, maybe a year, maybe 2 years. That's okay. Time is passing anyway. Would you rather arrive at that point having taken these consistent, aligned actions, or arrive there still in the same place because you never started? And here's something important. The unfolding isn't always linear. Some weeks you'll make obvious progress. Some weeks it will feel like nothing's happening. That's normal. Growth isn't linear. But consistency over time creates transformation regardless. You'll have moments of doubt. That's normal too. Moments where you wonder if this is working, if you're on the right path, if you should give up. In those moments, come back to your vision. Come back to your wins journal. Come back to why you started this. And remember, you don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to take the next step, and then the next one. The path reveals itself as you walk it. You can't see the whole journey from the beginning, and that's okay. You don't need to. What you need is to trust the process. Trust that small, aligned actions compound. Trust that consistency creates momentum. Trust that your vision, paired with deliberate steps, manifests real change. You've accumulated so much over the years. Skills, wisdom, networks, self-knowledge. All of that is fuel for this transition. You're not starting from zero. You're starting from abundance, even if it doesn't always feel that way. And you're capable of this. People like you, at this stage, with intention and consistency, succeed at this at remarkably high rates. You're not an outlier for wanting more alignment. You're not crazy for pursuing this. You're human, and you're at a stage where this kind of reset is not only possible, but probable. So take a deep breath. Feel the weight of possibility mixed with the peace of knowing you have time. You have what you need. You have the principles. You have the path. Now it's just about walking it, one small step at a time. The career you deserve is waiting, not somewhere far off, but right here in the consistent unfolding of these aligned actions, in the daily 25 minutes, in the experiments and feedback loops, in the recovery time that lets it all integrate. It's not too late. It was never too late. Midlife isn't the end. It's the beginning of something truer, something more aligned, something that actually fits who you've become. And it starts now, with one small step, and tomorrow, another, and the day after, another. Watch how it unfolds. Trust the process. Trust yourself. You've got this. The reset is already beginning. Rest well. Your transformation is already underway. Download our free guide, linked below video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more.